You said the world needs power, I won't disagree. There's heat in the ground and the wind runs free. You call nuclear the future, but it won't power itself. Nuclear relies on coal more than coal needs itself. You said crypto was coming and demand would explode, that AI would load what the grid couldn't hold. But SMRs stay delayed, no ground ever breaks, and the public pays out while the promise remakes. You said it's the hour, but the plan's still the same. The technology is analog from the Cold War days. There's no place for the waste, and yuccas refused. Vented dry cast containers become the only refuge.
Hello, welcome back.
You say you lead the charge with a federal hand. Would you vote Price, Anderson,
Always takes
or
me a minute, bear
stand
with me.
the land? You call it advanced, but the cycle's well known. Still chasing a fuel that should have stayed into stone.
That's known as the enrichment, man. And you can listen to the song right here in the chat room. You'll see it. It's James Luce's site on YouTube. Has over 300 other songs similar. Just almost ready. All right, here we go. I'm a bit late tonight. I was out researching birds all day. I got a bit of sunstroke, I think. So I'm a bit slow tonight. I'm doing okay now. Sat down, I got a cup of tea, ice water. Everything is working. We got stupid stories tonight. You can call in at 709-589-4406. The number is in the comment section in the chat room. Thanks, Dana. All right. So, United Kingdom has chosen Rolls-Royce for their small mini. That's not just a small modular reactor, a mini small modular reactor. That's 500 megawatts. It's a lot of countries, that's considered a large reactor. That's their, not considered, but it is their large reactor. And the criteria for the small modular reactor, the consensus was 300. Like they originally started 60 to 100, then they moved up to 200, then they moved to 300. Then Rolls-Royce said, well, our small modular reactor is only 500 megawatts, which is, it's got nothing to do with small. That's a massive reactor. And the Canadian small modular reactors are 270 feet tall. Or 240 feet tall. I don't know where 270 came from. They're 24-story buildings. They're skyscrapers. You can't keep up with the crazies. The Canadian reactors are just massive. Rolls-Royce is almost twice as big. No, Dana, no, Master Dana, it's a mini small modular reactor. Mini nuclear reactors, and of course you get the same design as the Canadian reactor, a sketch, right? Artist rendition, whatever you want to call it, AI. And it's a pretty shitty artist, that's what he came up with. It's not. It's going to be a 24-story building, 25, 26-story building. Most of it will be underground, like Canadian reactors. It still doesn't change the fact. When was the last time you entered a building that was 14 stories underground? That's what the Canadian reactors are. And 10 stories above it or something. Still a skyscraper. Or vice versa, rather. 10 stories underground, 14 stories above it. Does that look like a 14-story building to you? Do you really think they can build a reactor for $2.5 billion? I gotta see that one. Have they ever built anything on budget or even within half a planet of the budget? Rolls-Royce will build the country's first mini nuclear power plant as part of a multi-billion pound effort to make Britain a world leader in the technology. Britain don't build reactors. France builds Britain's reactors for starters. The leader in the technology. Like Great Britain is not even pissing on China's leg in the context of reactors. It's like a chihuahua coming up and pissing on a horse's leg. Horse like, never to be seen again. Little puddle on the side of the road there. I can't wrap my mind around it. They just announced they're going to spend £14 billion on Sizewell, I think it is it? We'll get there. America's $75 billion nuclear bet. I never heard of this. What do you mean $75 billion bet? Oh, it's Yahoo, so it doesn't really matter that much. Westinghouse versus the future of energy. Active talks with U.S. Brookfield and Camco. Camco is a fuel. It's a uranium miner, and they make fuel. And Brookfield, of course, in the nuclear was they bought up Westinghouse's assets after they went bankrupt, which typically is not a very good. And Brookfield is supposed to be a pension fund, right? It's not supposed to be buying dangerous assets with people's pension money. Pennsylvania-based firm is in active talks with U.S. officials, tech firms, and utilities to build 10 large nuclear reactors under President Trump's new energy directive. They're going to build 10 large reactors. They're going to triple the current capacity of their country. So they're going to build 200 1-gigawatt reactors. That's by 2050. Not at some point in the future, but by 2050, in 25 years. They don't have the manpower. Do you know how many people it takes to weld up a reactor? It's just thousands and thousands and thousands. They don't even have that. Neither does the United Kingdom. And with the programs they got, they're going to produce, what was it, 10 welders in a 2-year period. They need 10,000. Whatever it was, I think it was going to take them 300 years to build or to train enough welders at the rate that they were talking about. It's not me. I'm not making that up. That's them. That's their numbers that they put out. What are small nuclear reactors? Somebody should have a chat with Rolls-Royce. They think it's a massive reactor, And if they just call it a mini nuclear reactor, then magic, it's a mini nuclear reactor. It's so much fun, to listen to these crazies. What are small nuclear reactors? Now, just before I get started, I was out for 4.5 hours looking for birds on the coastline. And I didn't even see a crow along the way, let alone a sparrow or a finch. That's insane. I'm in the middle, right now, of the biggest migratory run of seabirds on the entire planet. And I can't find a single bird. Where millions of generations of these migratory birds have raised their fledglings. They should be unbelievably active. And so a little burnt out. It was a good day to get out there and do the research, do the field studies. But we're in real trouble. Japan's radioactive fallout has broken the food chain. It was going to break anyway with 70 years of emission from the nuclear industry. But with a pulse event like Japan, because they had 36 reactors in 4 buildings and 8 fuel pools. They're all gone. Let's get after it. What are small nuclear reactors? Well, nobody knows. You haven't built one yet. And the ones they're building are massive. Are gonna build, excuse me. Apologies, I meant to turn the volume down. I missed it. $2.5 billion for these small modular reactors. And they announced $14.2 billion to build a new large-scale reactor, Sizewell C. The one they're building right now, its evil twin, is full of rats. And when I mean full of rats, it's full of rats. Like, we've never heard tell of anything like that before. And we've seen Fukushima got closed down, lost all power because of a single rat chewing in the wires. What's tens of thousands of rats going to do at a new construction site where all the wires are already in pipes, which is buried in concrete, and the only thing that can get in there is a rat? And of course, rat loves insulation, loves chewing on those things. Can't see how they're going to get it running. And I guarantee the rats are going to end up at Sizewell. Rolls-Royce wins a UK small nuclear reactor deal. They're reactors, though, because we've covered this since Rolls-Royce mentioned the word small modular reactor. We covered the small modular reactor, the whole inception of the last, the big push, say, for the last 5, 6, 7 years. I don't think we've ever missed a story. Rolls-Royce wins UK small nuclear reactor deal. Whoopie-doo. Oh, now it's, 3.4 billion US for the small modular reactor program over the next 4 years, aiming to kickstart one of Europe's first small-scale nuclear industries. The media will take nothing and then pump it up and hope that the investors are gullible, I guess, and will buy into it. That's what it's basically all about. First off, Rolls-Royce is just greedy. 90% of that money is going to get chewed up in administration, like every other project they've ever done. Small modular reactors are typically the size of 2 football pitches. Or typically, really. I thought you could put them on the back of a truck and move them somewhere. And their reactor, they're calling it a mini, so it should be easily, maybe fit in the back of a pickup truck. 2 football pitches. They got enough farmland for all of these things? Because that's where they put them all. They can't contain the radioactive fallout, so might as well poison you in the supermarket with it. With parts that can be built in a factory, here we go. Quicker and cheaper and taller and faster than a traditional plant, which may take more than a decade. Well, it's definitely going to take more than a decade. It's a large reactor. No blank check for Sizewell C, says Starmer. $14.2 billion investment confirmed. So they get the new prime minister, he just tells some politician to go out and announce they're going to do it, and the taxpayers are stuck with the most expensive electricity for 100 years. or give or take, because by then they might be extending them for another 100 years. They're so crazy, right? They're such a greedy. The only way they can exist is kill the entire planet because of the radioactive fallout from the fuel pools is a guarantee. Why is this always surrounded by farms? Where are you going to find a farmland for a nuclear renaissance? Is there enough farmland out there to support a nuclear renaissance? They can't contain the radiation, so they surround these things with farms, and then guess where all the radiation ends up? On your dinner plate. Almost every nuclear power plant worldwide surrounded by farms. Can't be an accident or a coincidence. Area of outstanding natural beauty prepares for a third nuclear plant. Outstanding natural beauty is no longer natural because the radiation has been destroying it for at least 80 years, right? Further down the coast in Essex, in the Bradwell-on-the-Sea Magnox nuclear power plant, like Sizewell A, is being decommissioned. Stopped generating electricity in 2002. 10 years ago, they didn't have their cover stories and their propaganda nailed down because no one was paying attention to the nuclear industry, I guess. Pre-Fukushima, nobody was really paying attention. There's compared to the population that now is what I'm saying, right? There was anti-nuclear, but that was it. You were anti-nuclear. Otherwise, you weren't paying attention. But in the last 10 years, they've been very cognitive of their image. The Magnox reactors, of course, that's the first one they've ever started to decommission. Before Fukushima, when they talk about decommissioning a reactor, they talk about a 66 decades, 60 years or so. You need gas, oil, and coal plants, at least 2 of them, big ones, dedicated to build it, to run it, and then for another 50, 60 years to decommission it. And over 90% of it was considered radioactive waste. United Kingdom hired a bunch of new kids out of college, and they said, we're going to change that. Only 3% is now nuclear waste. The rest can be recycled. Have a nice day. Where's my bonus? Where are the millenniums? It's a sadistic industry, and the industry allowed them to do it. Like, Stellarator in Scotland is at least 325 years to decommission that one. 325 years. Even then, it won't, there's so much releases, and they're hiring kids out of school to go to work there so they can be trained hands-on. Not because they're naive and gullible, and radiation sickness typically takes a long time to manifest. NANO Nuclear appoints a former U.S. Secretary of Energy, 47th Governor of Texas. We've talked about this before, leading up to this. So it's official now. Rick Perry is the chairman of his executive advisory board because he's got all the connections with the Department of Energy and the government agencies, right? It's a lobby. He was a lobbyist, and now this is his kickback. He takes out his little black book and tells them who to call. And then he'll kick back. They'll kick back to him. He'll kick back to whoever they're going to call. Brings extensive experience in energy policy and public service, including his advocacy for nuclear power during his tenure. The appointment strengthens NANO nuclear leadership team, but they don't have a product. They're getting money from investors who don't understand there's no product, so they're not going to get money back, only from the speculation, right? That people are gullible and buys into because they've been manipulated by the propaganda machine, and they put their money into it, and then they start losing their life savings and a large chunk of it, so they have to pull their money out, and then the company, so they're just stealing the hard work and investors' money without a product. How is it even legal? The company's executive advisory board consists of high-level military, high-level scientific, and high-level government experts who provide industry knowledge and strategic connections to the endless cash machine known as the taxpayers. High-level military, high-level scientific, and high-level government experts. They don't even have a reactor. They don't even have an application into the regulatory agency. Way to go, NANO. Screwing everybody so you can pretend to your children that you're a good person. Nice job. Good job. Small modular reactors in Sizewell offer new nuclear job boost. So anything else you're going to build would be new nuclear job boost. Anything a small mini nuclear reactor, can do, geothermal can do it better and do it right away. You don't need thousands of people. Just what a stupid. Nuclear is your biggest burden to have in species and a future, because of the perpetual emissions from the fuel pools. Just 1,000 fuel pools hemorrhaging into the environment. Brutal censorship in last night's video. Video before it, brutal. They got no one to pick on. They got the shit kicked out of me. Small modular reactors in Sizewell offer new nuclear job boost. Yes, so would geothermal. So would any energy. And they always put that out there as their main reason they're going to do it or something, because that's the only thing they got to hang on to. Rolls-Royce, small modular reactor. They forgot to call it a mini, which is 500 megawatts. It's half a gigawatt. It's a friggin' massive reactor. And they're going to be using plutonium mixed oxide fuel. The proverbial idiot fuel, which poisons, is just hideous emissions. Like the emissions from a typical reactor, the fuel pool, which you can't contain because there's no containment, it's directly into the environment, that's why they're surrounded by farms, is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. The emissions from these reactors, so-called small modular reactors, which is going to be the high assay plutonium, uranium enriched it'd be the MOX fuel, plutonium mixed oxide fuel, basically, is the name they gave it. It's monstrous to do it, to produce that kind of fuel. And then to show you this picture, as if somebody would look, they got somebody with two hands, and it's like a body, because look how the arms line up, and it's like a shoulders. Instead of a head, they got a nuclear crystal ball. At least $2.5 billion promised for the overall small modular reactor program. Rolls-Royce doesn't even have an application into the regulatory agency with a license. This is strictly meant to rob unsuspecting investors, I would imagine. With this project potentially supporting 3,000 new jobs, new skilled jobs. So what? Any large-scale energy would produce the same amount of jobs to build it. But you're going to have to keep thousands. You're going to have to spend $100 million a year just to keep it functional. It's idiotic. In addition, and I would rather have birds and bees than nuclear, wouldn't you? I'd rather have whales that are not emaciated than nuclear. In addition, the government has announced a $14.2 billion investment to build Sizewell C. Does anybody, like, that's, Hinkley Point was, the original number was $7 billion to build it. It's $57 billion now. And it's far from the final number. Oh yeah, that should be $14.2 billion. It's going to create 10,000 jobs. 5,000 of them are welders. They got to train the welders. They don't have them because the ones they managed to get and train and bring in from different countries, and they're still looking for them for Hinkley Point, which is now a disaster. Dirty, dirty people, man. Oh, it's going to make 10,000 jobs. Yeah, but they're going to come in from foreign countries because you need specific skills. It's not going to be jobs for the average unemployed, stuck in debt spiral employees across Britain. And Britain right now is full of invaders. Military-aged invaders. Not with families, not with wives, but military-aged invaders that can be conscripted and turned against the population who they already despise. Nuclear disaster-struck Chernobyl could be turned into a sustainable tourism hub after war. Nuclear disaster-struck Chernobyl. There's lots of these headlines. I like to play backwards and find out what they're trying to tell us. The devil is good. Devil good. Basically what you get when you play it backwards. Post-war restoration plan reimages Chernobyl exclusion zone. Post-war. So Ukraine's war is over. The Russian war is over. Is inflation going to roll back when that's over, by the way? Look at the inflation that has caused. It doubled the prices of all commodities. Gas, oil, coal, steel, aluminum, gyprock, you name it. Post-war restoration plan reimages Chernobyl exclusion zone. It's not social engineering. It's hideous, monstrous scumbaggery. Post-war restoration plan reimages Chernobyl exclusion zone as a symbol of resilience and learning. And then they got the arrogant to put their picture there. You can't change a nuclear wasteland by writing a bunch of paragraphs. In a powerful symbol of resilience. Ukraine is working to turn the Chernobyl exclusion zone nearby city into an international tourism and education center. Yeah, let's bring everybody into the nuclear wasteland. We'll tell them it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine. They'll go home and get sick. We'll buy shares in the pharmaceutical industry there. What a disgusting industry. As reported by the World Nuclear News, which is the World Nuclear Association, it's a lobbying group. It's a pro-nuclear lobbying group. Their job is to, like the International Atomic Energy Agency, their job is to promote nuclear. Like IAEA is a public relation firm gone on steroids. The 1986 explosion of a reactor, Unit 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear plant, led to the creation of 4,200 square kilometers, approximately 1,600 square miles exclusion zone, deemed too dangerous for humans due to radioactive contamination. They closed 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, United Kingdom, 3,000 kilometers away. Which means you should have abandoned Ireland, Scotland, and United Kingdom after Chernobyl. You really think the radiation only went to 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, and United Kingdom? It didn't go anywhere else? Didn't go into the fresh water? Poison everything and everybody? Before 2022... false flag war, Chernobyl was slowly becoming a tourism hotspot. For idiots, for people that are incredibly gullible. The only people that's going to go there are people that are incredibly greedy or gullible. Guided tour took visitors to haunting landmarks such as ghost towns of Pripyat. These are not haunting ghost towns, these are nuclear wastelands. It's impossible not to be contaminated, which is catastrophic to your health immediately and for the rest of your life. Your body attacks to radiation every second for the rest of your life with white blood cells. It's an instant reaction. and then it gets worse every day of your life. The imposing new safe confinement structure, which is a joke, and they admit that. Enormous steel shell built to cover the destroyed reactor and contain the radiation. It's absurd to suggest you can contain it. It's been hemorrhaging out of there for 30 plus years. They didn't close 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, and the United Kingdom because it was contained, okay? It's absurd to suggest that it was contained. And then calling it leaks. The damage was done within 48 hours to the whole planet. It took another 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Post-war restoration plan re-images Chernobyl. And so wildlife, as soon as I seen that, I was like, dirty, rotten scoundrels. Wildlife has returned. So I opened that leak, and how Chernobyl's dogs gained a superpower to survive the worst nuclear disaster ever. And this is interesting engineering. And there's that shit for brains writer again. So this story, they're calling the dogs have gained superpowers by being in a nuclear wasteland. This is the furthest thing from the truth, as you'll see in a minute. And I'll show you this picture, but it's actually like this. And the academics who were studying radioactive fallout are taking care of the dogs. They're feeding the dogs. The dogs are dependent upon them all winter long, in particular. And in the summer, the dogs are dependent upon them for health care, veterinarian care, and this is what the local academic community is doing. And then the media will write headlines claiming that the dogs have superpower to survive the worst nuclear disaster ever. And you see that statement, the worst nuclear disaster ever. Now, I'm not saying it's not horrifying, but it was a graphite reactor. It was a brand new reactor. Each of Chernobyl's reactors are equal to 100 each of Fukushima's reactors are equal to 100 Chernobyl reactors. They're pure uranium, pure plutonium. They're massive reactors. Chernobyl was a new reactor. It was a graphite, totally different than Fukushima reactors. Still terrible, but nothing compared to Fukushima. Still horrifying, as we covered many times. And I still haven't done this year's anniversary video. And I was reading this story this morning before I took off, and then this evening when I got home again. And I was tempted to do a show tonight. Let's keep going here. Hundreds of feral radioactive dogs are displaying extraordinary genetic mutations. This is simply not true. Capable of withstanding the harsh radioactive environment. This is simply not true. The furthest thing from the truth. You see the urban explorers, there's all kinds of carcasses of dead dogs rotted in the ground in buildings and everything else. The dogs are there because they abandoned the place, the pets were left behind, right? And back in those days, it was very rare for a dog to be tied up unless he was vicious. And usually only because he was abused heavily when he was young. The sudden evacuation forced many residents to leave behind their pets, resulting in hundreds of dogs becoming unattended residents of the nuclear wasteland. Not desolate zone, but a nuclear wasteland. The Red Forest, and we've showed a lot of these academic studies, saw its pine trees red because the pine trees have died. That's why it's a red forest. It's not a red forest because of nature. It's a red forest because radiation has killed the trees. It killed the bacteria in the ground and the fungus, which kills the biota. It's necessary. It needs the fungus bacteria to live in, right? And so now the ground doesn't suck up water anymore. This is what we're seeing happening worldwide post-Fukushima, by the way. Which is why you're having all these flash floods worldwide, where you're having all these forest fires, is because the foliage in the litter isn't breaking down anymore due to the fact that radiation kills the biota by eliminating the fungus and the bacteria, which everything else is dependent upon. And a rusted hue due to intense radiation exposure. Intense is not the right word. It's kind of getting there, though. Despite it, I mean, they found particles out in the woods that over a sievert. If you hang out there for 20, 30 minutes, you can, you're well on your way to a lethal dose. You'd be dead in a week or two. Despite initial devastation, the lack of the human presence led to an unexpected recovery of local fauna. Like, what are you talking about? What the hell does that even mean? People didn't mow their lawns anymore? Do you really think the humans had... the faunas all ran away because the humans were there, and now that they're not there, they migrated back? Is that what you're trying to say? What are you trying to say, man? Unexpected recovery of local plants. Over the years, the area became a refuge for various species. There's always migratory species, big species, wolves and bears and moose and large animals, right? Migratory animals. Became a refuge. But on the other side of that equation, what they're saying is that all the species disappeared. And many, many decades later, now they're seeing big species like wolves and bears. And it's always the same animals, isn't it? Massive animal, migratory animals. Who, by the way, can't read radiation signs. Who don't watch TVs and know that it's not safe to be there. In 2017, a state veterinarian agency in the Czech Republic reported about half all the wild boars in the Czech Republic southwest were radioactive and considered unsafe for consumption. I can show you those headlines, actually. And that's true long after 2017. We've covered it since then, too. A volunteer from the Dogs at Chernobyl initiative. A volunteer for the Dogs at Chernobyl initiative. Not super dogs. They're not superpower. They have also formed bonds, the dogs have, the abandoned dogs, with the workers and scientists who periodically visit the zone, relying on them for food and occasional care. Relying on them for food. Super dogs. Efforts to mitigate the risk these dogs face have increased. Conservation groups and scientists providing necessary medical care, vaccinations, adoptions, initiatives to rehome some of the dogs outside the contamination zones. No, Dana, they're super dogs. At the worst nuclear disaster ever, Dana. One of the most catastrophic nuclear events in history. No. The worst nuclear disaster ever. No. One of the most catastrophic events in history. So the headlines they put in there, right, because most people are just going to read the headlines. Calling that piece of shit that wrote the story a piece of shit is being polite. Oh, it was a rough day today. I pushed it a little bit too much. 4.5 hours of steady go along the coastline. I didn't see a bird. And you go down all these little roads and nooks and crannies, and you don't see any kind of little birds. No seagulls, no crows along the way. And you get to the coastline. It's perfect, flat calm, man. Perfect visibility. Do you get any idea how heartbreaking it is to experience something like that just once? Like, mentally, which doesn't matter because I shouldn't put myself above the birds. I'm not. I'm just saying, I guess. And now what? They're going to build more reactors? There's no solution for anything they created. Everything they created is splitting atoms directly into the environment 24 hours a day, which is considered the worst case scenario for a planet and a species. This stuff is really for 80 years nonstop, and not counting all the events, nuclear meltdowns and accidents and dumpings, the dumpings that they've done. Let's just touch up on some of that stuff for a minute. Haven't touched that folder for a while. If I could find it. Let me see what we got here. It's such a terrible industry, right? Carbon-free folder. Let's try that one. That's hilarious. That's not the folder, unfortunately. Chernobyl coal plants. I think that's the folder. Because I got all kinds of subfolders in there. Maybe this is it. Oh yeah, that's probably it. Radiation therapy. You want to see that stuff? You'll never go to a hospital again. 15 container ships produce more carbon than 700, all the cars on the planet. I get started now. Global warming, climate change, blah, blah, blah. Headlines, radioactive fallout map. Is that it? I gotta rename that folder. Yeah, that'll work. I'm not gonna go through details. Maybe, who knows with me. This was a folder I jammed together in like an hour and a half or 2 hours or something from headlines that I had. I was just trying to get a lot of the batshit crazy nuclear industry stuff so I can tell the type of story I'm about to tell you right now. Radioactive cleanup at Idaho National Nuclear Site is working. This is the strangest headline imaginable. These are the top of 50,000-pound casks that are full of nuclear fuel. They're buried in the ground because the casks can't shield you from the radiation. And everything there is vented. Andreevia Bay reaches a cleanup landmark. This is where the Soviet Union took all their fuel to this place and then left it in fuel pools from the nuclear submarines to change the fuel out. And they just left it for, 50 years or something. It was abandoned. And anyway, a bunch of countries got together and spent a fortune to get it out of there. Then they sent it to Mayak. And Mayak, of course, is a reprocessing site in the Urals. And so the releases would have been hideous. And the releases are hideous. That for 50 plus years, this is up in the Arctic, hemorrhaging radiation directly into the environment. A lot of the fuel pools were outdoors. Origin and age of ongoing radioactive contamination of the soils near France's reprocessing facility, La Hague, reprocessing plant. And they're only based on plutoniums and americium, which decays to plutonium, by the way, after 2.5 days. That's why you see the 241 americium, 241 plutonium/plutonium. It's because americium in 2.5 days will decay to plutonium-241, rather, and strontium-90. So you're ignoring another 1,000 fission products, just a study based on these three isotopes is enough to contaminate the Antarctic, along with what was coming out of Sellafield and everything. Stillbirths among the offspring of male radiation workers. So what do you do at Sellafield? Well, I'm a radiation worker. Did you ever go to school? What school? At Sellafield Nuclear Reprocessing Plant. Just Sellafield and La Hague alone has contaminated the entire Antarctic and Europe. You got to contaminate Europe to get to the Antarctic, right? Science and trans science and radiation risk assessment. Child cancer around a nuclear fuel reprocessing plant at Sellafield. Child cancer around a nuclear reprocessing plant at Sellafield. Let me run that by you again. Child cancers So one of the studies was just they were having clusters at this one point of leukemia in children. And so they done a study and blamed it on the common cold. There was another study blamed it on population mixing. It can't be from the nuclear site. It has to be from population mixing or common cold that caused all the cancers. The distribution of iodine-129 with a 15 million year half-life, just 10 half-lives, around West Valley, which is New York, in an active nuclear fuel reprocessing facility. So when you find the one, because it's very prolific, the 129, it's a nasty isotope for everything with replicating cells. Right, it doesn't pulse energy very far, but it does it for 150 million years. And it's man-made, so it's very, nothing on the planet has an autoimmune trigger that can defend against it. If it's in your body, it's enough to destroy millions of chromosomes and DNA in cells every second. And it's in your body. After Fukushima, it was so prolific. It was 220 million atoms a liter of water in the Canadian study from Ottawa, sustained for months, which means it's never going to go away. It's here for 150 million years, and it doesn't travel by itself, of course. The most powerful nuclear detonation ever carried out by the United States was Castle Bravo, which is, the numbers vary. It could have been 1,400 Nagasaki, Hiroshima type bombs going off at the same time. The radioactive fallout was lethal for 5,500 miles to people that were exposed. I can play that video for you if you like. Released a large quantity of radioactive debris into the atmosphere that fell over 7,000 square miles. The Soviet Union's biggest nuclear bomb was equal to 3,800 Nagasaki, Hiroshima type bombs. I guess they were Hiroshima. Hiroshima was 15 kilotons, and Nagasaki was 21 kilotons. The number kind of varies, don't it, when you have different sources. Even all these years later. The shockwave was so big, in fact, it hit the bomber itself despite being 75 miles away. The blast was so powerful it actually prevented a subsequent 5-mile-wide fireball from ever touching the ground, with the mushroom cloud reaching 42 miles into the air. 42 miles. 42 miles. 7 times higher than Mount Everest, invisible from 620 miles away, 1,000 kilometers away. People in Norway and Finland even reported feeling a blast shattering windows 1,000 kilometers away. That's a nuclear war. That's equal to 2 countries firing 1,900 Nagasaki bombs at each other at the one time. The radioactive fallout was hideous. 350 nuclear bombs and ongoing suffering. The shameful history of nuclear testing in Australia and the Pacific. The United Kingdom, not just Marling and Montebello or Edmonds Field, they set off 700 dirty bombs where they took high inventories of like 40 kilograms rather, of plutonium in just one test. Wrapped it in conventional explosives and detonated it. They done 700 of these dirty bombs in Australia. They wouldn't do it in their own country. They went to Australia because they hated the Australians. And they always waited for the wind to blow across Australia when they done the nuclear test on top of that. The nuclear war. That's what a nuclear test is. It's a nuclear war. It's the same bomb. It's the same radioactive fallout. You can see the decline of every species from pre-nuclear industry to all this nuclear testing. Right there, you start to see massive decline in every species. The secondary sex ratio in Italy over the past 80 years, potential impact of radiological contamination from atmospheric nuclear testing after Chernobyl. They've done sex ratio studies on the entire planet. after nuclear testing worldwide, which was a nuclear war. That's instead of blowing up another country, you just blew yourself up. The radioactive fallout was the exact same. The Keystone disaster, the largest nuclear disaster you never heard of. This industry has went to great lengths to poison every species and every drinking water source and all the salt water on the entire planet. There's nothing on the planet, not a tree, not an insect, not a bird, not a mammal, not an animal, not a biota on this planet that hasn't been bombarded with anthropogenic man-made radioactive fallout. This single fucking industry, this disgusting parasitic industry, has destroyed the future of humanity and the 8 million species with just radioactive fallout. But when you start lumping in all this stuff, you really appreciate that this is a mortal enemy of everything with replicating cells. That's the best way to describe nuclear. It's the mortal enemy of everything with replicating cells. That's because it happened in 1957 at the height of the Cold War in the eastern Ural Mountains. The Soviet disclosed details no one, not even the people affected, and even the name is misdirection. It didn't happen in the Keystone, it happened in the town of Chernobyl, 65. No, they made it, like the Mayak production was a plutonium facility. I can't remember what I got here. I'll finish the story now. Radioactive waste was disposed of by dumping it into the Techa River. And I can't find the studies from over 2 decades ago that I had. But I had studies showing 7,500 little tiny communities along the Techa River, which is a massive river. It goes all the way to the Black Sea. Were forced to evacuate their little communities. 7,500 communities, or 7,400 communities. I can't remember. It was one or the other anyway. Solid waste dumped on site and smoke was released into the air. This wasn't smoke, this was radioactive, burning radioactive fuel emissions burnt directly into the environment. And what they used to do back then was they used the prisoners from the gulags and that to take the nuclear waste in wheelbarrows down to the Techa River and dump it into the river. Right? They had this causeway built out, like to use bulldozers and that, and they would run it to the end of it where the river was running fast and dump it. They had this wharfage system so they can get out over the water and dump it so the river would drag it all the way down. And of course, most of these people only lasted 2 or 3 days and they died. And then they were buried on the hillside where, of course, all their radiation eventually leaked into the ocean. A waste tank exploded, sending a cloud of radioactive material into the air, which fell over an area of 20,000. This waste tank, they were putting, instead of dumping it into the river, there was issues, so they were dumping it into tanks. And of course, you had all the fuel in the bottom of the tanks, you get a chain reaction. Because you don't need oxygen, right? You just need the bombardments. So what they done after that was they took the fuel and they went up to the top of the mountains in what they call the Urals. And at the top of one of the mountains was this big pond, was created by rainfall. It didn't have an estuary or a river feeding it. It was a pond at the top of the mountain where there's a lot of moisture, and it was filled up by rain. And so they put the nuclear waste up there. And then a few years later, they had a drought, and the pond dried out. And so they contaminated another 20,000 square miles or something. But a waste tank sending a cloud of radioactive material into the air fell over an area of 20,000 square kilometers. And the 270,000 people living there, only 11,000 were evacuated. And that took 2 years to accomplish. So they were incredibly radioactive and poison, and there's all kinds of heart and liver and lung and respiratory and pituitary and thyroid problems. Very long list, right? Within a few days, 300 of the village's 5,000 residents died of radiation poisoning. Within a few days, 300 of the 5,000 people lived there died. So the rest of them would have been... Once you're evacuated, they're not tracking you no more, especially back in those days. And these were very transient people as it was. So there was a lot more that would have died. List of civilian nuclear accidents, 1950s, 60s, 70s. There's no way you can encompass it. 1952, Chalk River, Canadian. It melted down twice. They covered it up significantly. I like this headline. Remember this headline? Look Britain's nuclear veterans in the eye, Prime Minister, and tell them they're imagining it. Something like 11 administrations refused to acknowledge that the veterans were poisoned at the nuclear testing. Shocking state of the world's riskiest nuclear waste site. Huge pools of mystery sludge, leaking silos, risk of explosions. The UK government has just sacked the firm running the cleanup. The communities around here were cancer clusters, and they were blaming it on the common flu. They said there was no way it could be Sellafield. Why is Sellafield surrounded by farms? You got 1,000 nuclear buildings there surrounded by farms. It's not an accident, right? Sellafield was contaminated, milk, chickens, the golf course. Right, because Sellafield used to be named Windscale. In 1957, when it melted down, was the plutonium mixed oxide reactor number 4. There's still 8 million liters a day going into the ocean. This was Britain's worst ever nuclear accident, but nobody was evacuated. No iodine pills were distributed. Work went on. Most people were never told about the fires, about the nuclear meltdowns. The dangers of Rocky Flat are forgotten, but not gone. What they done at Rocky Flat was shocking, right? We have a friend of ours that, from the show here, that suffered horrific health conditions because he grew up in Rocky Flat area on a farm, a piece of farmland or something. Hanford cleanup cost triples, and that's the best case scenario. It's not triple per se. At its worst, it could be $700 billion to clean it up. And they figured it's going to take 300 years, the same as Donerae in England, right? In Scotland, rather. Russia's Arctic nuclear dump may become a promising fishing ground. 18,000, there were 17,000 containers of nuclear waste, 16 nuclear reactors, 6 of them with spent uranium fuel still on board, 17 ships and barges loaded with radioactive waste were dumped into the Arctic Ocean. And it was all kept secret. This study cracks me up. The nuclear submarine, the sunken nuclear submarine, and its effects on the environment. This was a study by Russia and, don't quote me, Finland, Norway? I can't remember anymore. It found that neither the submarine's hull nor the reactor vessels will be destroyed by corrosion at the bottom of the ocean for at least 1,000 years. Really, I was a commercial diver for 14 years. Doing 100-day trips back to back. And in my spare time, that's what I'd done. I dove shipwrecks and that. To suggest that something's going to sit on the ocean floor, especially from the old era on top of that, is going to sit on the floor for 1,000 years and not corrode. Do you have any idea how batshit crazy that? And that study could be challenged by almost any academic on the planet of any discipline, and they can destroy them. This is 1997. The sunken nuclear submarine Komsomolets and its effect on the environment. Neither the submarine nor the reactor will be destroyed by corrosion for at least 1,000 years. It won't even last like a year without incredible corrosion because of electrolysis, different metals, right? Lazy people. Fears in a EMP meltdown nuclear power plants. If you have electronic magnetic pulse event from the sun hit the planet just right, you'll melt down almost all the nuclear reactors on the planet at one time. Mortality about the U.S. Military participants at 8 above-ground nuclear weapons test series. San Onofre spews, every nuclear power plant spews liquid batches of radioactive materials into the oceans, the rivers, the lakes, the estuaries. Every single day. It's legal. They all have pipes going directly into the ocean. The little secrets of nuclear power at the bottom. So if you start putting in all the stuff they've already done to you, and the fact that there's 1,000 fuel pools out there hemorrhaging radiation 24 hours a day each. Belgium threw 30,000 tons of nuclear waste into the sea alone, into the North Atlantic during 15 different operations. 30,000 tons. Let me do the math for you so that you can admire how wickedly evil this lot actually is. You got to see it to appreciate it. Let me bring up the number here for you. Just give me a second. That's 60 million pounds, brother. 60 million pounds. It helps to see it, right? 60 million pounds in just 15 trips directly into the ocean. What the British done, they done this for 30 years. Every day for 30 years, they took nuclear waste out and threw it in the ocean. So the nuclear waste the British got right now is catastrophic, by the way. Because they try to reprocess all their fuel. They took fuel from other countries. Not just Japan, for instance, but many countries. 60 million pounds, just one country dumped into the Atlantic. Do you really think that stuff went away? You think that wasn't... And these were like, you're talking about drums of nuclear waste. And the drums are, the tops and bottoms are crimped on. And so when they start to sink, because as a commercial diver, I've seen it many, many times on the ocean floor, the drums will implode. Because every 33 feet, there's 14.6 pounds per square inch. Atmospheric pressures, right? So every 33 feet, you're going to double that up. You're going to 33 feet, you're going to triple it. And what happens is the drum crumbles, and then the bottom or the top will fall off, or both. And if you don't sink right away, they get shot. I still got 13 likes, really. I'm brutal on me tonight. I'm used to the censorship, not a big surprise. But it just shows you the incredible cowardness of these people. Like, you can't work in the industry unless you're a coward and a scumbag. But first criteria is you're a coward. You're a degenerate monster type coward. Then you can get a job censoring people like me who work for the nuclear industry. Houses damaged from nuclear explosions, demolition. Coalition seeks another $7.2 billion for Hanford. Hanford dumped so much nuclear waste during the Manhattan Project alone. It was 450 billion gallons. And because most people can't picture that, they can't wrap their mind around that. That's an aquarium of nuclear waste. That's all of it splitting atoms, by the way. 6 feet wide, 518 feet tall. 58-story building wrapped around the entire planet more than once of high-level nuclear waste. That's just what they dumped into 41 miles of online trenches. It's not counting what they dumped into the Columbian River. It's not counting what they released in experiments into the ecosystem. There's Superfund sites. Everywhere there was nuclear, there's a Superfund site. Unrestricted use of Donerae in Scotland, nuclear site in 300 years. We have other headlines where it's it'll be back to normal. They'll clean it up in about 325 years. Why would you put this on your planet? My goodness. And the nuclear bombs that this destruction was made to create, was the justification for it. They can't even use them, because then nobody could cash their checks. But they knew what they were doing. They knew this stuff would down the road would kill the planet. They were like, well, we won't be alive, so who cares? That was their attitude, eh? They knew that doing all of this would ultimately end the planet anyway. You didn't need a nuclear war to kill the planet. You just need the nuclear on your planet. 300 years time, you can go back to Donna, Ray. Yes, let's build more of them. Homeless and the migrant workers were exploited to clean up the Fukushima radiation. The homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language. Not the people who knew what they were doing, not people that were able to make a difference, but the people least likely to be able to do a good job in the most dangerous job and the most important job in human history were the people that got the job. Downwinders impacted by nuclear testing can apply for compensation. Hanford site had passed a couple of years ago and went all the way to the Supreme Court, was that if you worked at Hanford for 8 hours, just a single shift, 8-hour shift, say 60 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 70 years ago, you got sick. You didn't have to prove it was caused by Hanford. You just got to prove you worked at Hanford. And you can get up to $150,000 cash and health care. Because it's not like a banana. It's not like a potato chip. It's not like walking in the sunshine. It's not like flying on an airplane. Not like climbing a mountain. And the people that say that at some point will be held accountable. There is no such thing as a downwinder. The radiation covers the whole planet. That's the problem. This downwinder narrative is on the premise that radiation is like a campfire where the smoke just blows one way, and then once the fire is out, everything is good. We're not even close to being. Let me explain it to you. And just a simple reality. Yeah, it was late getting the show up and running. It was a rough day today trying to. I didn't want to give up. I was like, I'm going to find a bird. I don't give a shit if it takes. I'm just going to sleep on the side of the road somewhere. I'm going to find a fucking bird today. And unfortunately, I got heat stroke. And then I'm coming home. So imagine this was Hanford, or this is nuclear testing, or it's actually Fukushima. But it doesn't matter what it is. This is This is the French government's study of 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air covering the entire planet. And this is 21 days right there. Radioactive fallout. So radioactive fallout, there's no such thing as a downwinder. The entire planet becomes a downwinder. And anthropogenic man-made radiation is the only material that creates a plume that covers the whole planet. Gas, oil, and coal emissions, the carbon doesn't travel very far because it's huge compared to this stuff. And this carbon doesn't pulse energy at the speed of light every second for millions of years. Radiation does. Carbon means more trees, more insects, more birds, more people, more puppies. Radiation destroys everything with replicating cells, and it's pulsing energy at the speed of light every second. So which is more likelier to cause climate change? 80 years of 1,000 fuel pools creating the same plume all day, every day, forever. It's assimilated in everything with replicating cells and attacks it. In 1986, a Russian submarine with 27 nuclear missiles sank and exploded. Had a nuclear war on the bottom of the ocean. We wonder why all the species are disappeared. The Soviet Union detonated a nuclear bomb to put out a burning gas well. Why not? The fire raged for 1,074 days. They detonated a nuclear bomb to put out a burning gas well. Very disappointing, right? Because At this point, they knew what radioactive fallout was going to do to all the species. They just chose to be scumbags because the population wasn't aware. It resulted in the disposition of 2 million gallons of contaminated water generated during the accident. Water during an accident means it's poured over fuel. Means it's full of fuel particulates. And the fuel particulates are the ones that are splitting atoms, or perpetual machines. And so to release that into the environment is typical, but it's just heartbreaking that this was normalized. The atomic history of Christmas Island, where humanity realizes most lethal potential. The babies that are born there today, they call them jelly babies. They took all of the tropical paradises, right? Montebello, Marolinga, Christmas Island, the French Polynesians, the Marshall Islands, Bikini Atolls, and they destroyed them. Every tropical paradise on the planet has been destroyed by an industry that was intent on killing everything anyway at some point. But these were the nurseries of the oceans too. And then they contaminated that to the point where the nursery is no longer functional. And that the species that are produced have been changed genetically and have been catastrophically compromised. Christmas Island was deemed a pristine place by the military when it was used for nuclear weapons tests during the Cold War. Yeah, these were tropical paradises. This was a study on Twitter. And they were talking about the visualization of information spreading by influencers within a half a year after Fukushima. They narrowed it down to 5 people whose tweets were retweeted, and this was the reason there was a big pushback against the nuclear industry. So all they had to do was silence those 5. And they broke the chain of information because these people were getting more educated every day, right? And they were spreading that information on Twitter. And so they isolated these 5 people. This was a study. Twitter sold the information, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was like don't quote me, it was like 87 million tweets from people, and they traced it all back to 5 Twitter users. Twitter sold that information, and then the nuclear industry used it, weaponized it to silence the 5 people that had a conscience. This is insanity, right? And how did we ever get over here? I can't remember. We were doing a story, then we jumped over to this stuff. Might as well finish it out. There's not that much more left. Oh yeah, just a couple more stories. We'll be back to the main story of the night. U.S. spent nuclear fuel inventory steadily increasing from 2013 to 2017. Well, the fuel, the more, because you increase more every day somewhere on the planet, you're putting more in the fuel pool. And then that means more atoms are splitting each day, being released into the environment. Next day, there's more atoms, because it's insane because the fuel you're taking out of the reactor to boil water for 1 million homes and businesses, the minute it comes out of the reactor, there's no containment. It's still splitting atoms. You're going to put it in the fuel pool, and so now there's more inventories. And so every day since the nuclear industry started, we've increased the amount of inventories that were exposed to the environment that are splitting atoms. And so we have this bioaccumulation of 80 years, but we've been increasing the inventory for the entire time. And we increasing the number of fuel pools for the entire time. So we have these over 1,000 places where fuel pools are that are hemorrhaging. And a lot of these fuel pools have 4, 5, 6 reactor cores in it. So instead of powering, say, 6 million homes with 6 reactor cores in a fuel pool, it's still splitting the atoms, but there's no containment. This is why almost every nuclear plant is surrounded by farms. And then you have your DULRAM, depleted uranium low-level radioactive material. They got rid of the latter part of those acronyms and called it DU. Nobody knows who done that or when they done it or why. But it disappeared from the lexicon eventually. It used to be called DULRAM. The A-10 Warthog, that's all it shoots is dirty bombs. And there was a story in 2019 where the United States studied the question of disposing of 35.7 million dirty bombs / munitions with a depleted DULRAM, depleted uranium low-level radioactive material core. The problem with these bullets on top of that were they were pyrophoric, and they catch fire as they're going through the air. So they distributed this so-called low-level radioactive material. Strontium, uranium, plutonium, and americium is in that stuff. And you poison everything along the way. And they used it against... these things were shooting 1.5 tons a minute. So during the Gulf War, it was 700 tons. And a Japanese physicist at a Hamburg conference in Germany, done that equation of 700 tons, was equal to 44,000 Nagasaki bombs of low-level radioactive fallout. 44,000. In addition to aviation munitions, the United States planned to hold utilization armored piercing tank shell calibers 105, 120 millimeters. They also the 150 millimeters with a 900 round kill ratio they used in Afghanistan and Iraq. And what that done, the people would come back to their homes after the bombings, these 900-foot craters, 3 football field craters, and they would go into their destroyed homes that were soaked in radioactive fallout from the DULRAMs, and they would take the toys and the eating utensils and the blankets, which were all radioactive, and go find some place to camp out because their homes were gone. And so in Basra, it was so bad, 80% of the women were having debilitating... The babies were suffering from severe congenital malformation. And they were deformed, they were lumps of flesh. And so all the women were taking birth control to make sure they couldn't have any more babies in Basra in particular, because the British had used so much depleted uranium munitions there, very high level stuff. And it was intended to do exactly that. In the munition factory in McAllister, Oklahoma, McAllister only makes the dirty bombs. McAllister's Army ammunition plants. It's a big facility. They have 3 major bomb factories there. There's 1,000 buildings there. But they have 3 major bomb makers there, big factories. And all they make is the DULRAM, depleted uranium low-level radioactive material bombs. Okay, so we're back to the stories from today. I'm doing a bit of a struggle to keep the show tonight because I was out on another research expedition today. We were broke down for a couple of days. We had problems. We got the equipment, the bike up and running again. I got the parts ordered in, but I'm tickled to death I got that up because it's cheap to run too, right? But it's a little harsh on you because you're exposed to the environment, the wind, and you're exposed to the sun and everything. And I'm not no spring chicken anymore. I'm far from a spring chicken anymore, I should say. And the weather is not too windy, so I can see a long ways from the coastlines. I got great eyes for birds and stuff, right? Let's keep going here. And I'm using binoculars too. I can't find any birds. No migratory birds. There's supposed to be 46 million migratory birds. I should be on the ocean in the boat, but I can't. I need a new motor. So what do I do? I try to hold a fundraiser for a week and see if I can raise enough money to get a new motor? Is that what I should do? I don't know what to do anymore. I would need to put a new motor in the back of this boat. That's not a 90, it's a 115. I lost the cover of that in a storm. And I got a 150. I didn't do it. It was lost in a... It used to be a search and rescue boat, right? That Zodiac, the red one. There's a 115, which is too small for that boat. Because that boat's been modified. I modified that a lot over the years. I mean, we went to Alaska with that boat for 6 years. From Vancouver, British Columbia, to Alaska for 6 years. 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean. So that, and then it's been down here in the Atlantic for a number of years. And so that engine should never have lasted that long. It lasted that long because I took great pains to take care of that. I changed the oil all the time. I must have killed at least 14 props on it. I rebuilt the leg on it a number of years ago. I put a 150 leg into it to beef up the leg on it. It's still underpowered though, right? And while I'm here, I might as well talk about that. So the research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska, here's the results of 6 years. At the first year we went out, the species to your left were missing. So we went back for 5 more years to see if the species to the left recovered. The pictures to the right are the pictures I took. Species to the left, they were there in 2011. After Fukushima, within a couple of years, they were gone. These were incredibly visible species, highly visible species. And so, the species to your left now are permanently gone. You'll never take them pictures again. It's an extinction event. Fukushima is an extinction event. And this wasn't just British Columbia. This was from Alaska to New Mexico. So if you got a healthy coastline, and I went down there with a dump truck and a backhoe and I dug everything up, and I put it in the backhoe and dragged it away, the coastline would just reseed that area from deeper, and from both sides would fill up that gap, and the ocean itself, a glass of water, have 1 billion creatures in it. So it would just reseed it the whole coastline. That didn't happen. It's like being on the moon. And one of the stories that came out was all along the Canadian Pacific coastline. This July the 7th, 2016. I was on the ocean at that time. And as far as I know, I'm the only guy who was reporting. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. Bodies are swollen by cancerous tumors. Unprecedented mutation allows cancer to spread from one species to another. So the official story was cancer wiped out all the species to your left after Fukushima. Cancer was spreading from one species to another. It was unprecedented, unheard of. Cancer was spreading from one species to another, and that's why they all disappeared. That is the craziest statement imaginable. But that was that's the closest they came to acknowledging the damage. But they still haven't acknowledged the fact that the species to your left are still missing. So where could they go? When the ocean is a soup of life, where could they go? Where did the species to your left died of cancer? Wrap your mind around that statement. The species to your left died of cancer. That's why they're not there no more. And that's a typical picture. And when I was a commercial diver, that was a typical picture. Not anymore. It's an extinction event. But they died of cancer. It's the closest they come. And I didn't think I was going to get a show tonight, and I was like, I'm doing a show. I don't give a shit. After going out there and not finding anything for 4.5 hours, that was a grueling. You're going into all these little spots, little communities, and you're going right down to the ocean. That's the beauty of the bike, right? You can take all the little tiny paths and side roads and everything. It's really effective, but it's still grueling because you're manhandling the bike down through all of this stuff. And I ain't no spring chicken. Iran says it will hit Israel's secret nuclear facility if it's attacked. I've been saying that for a long time. And anybody who's been here knows that's true. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Iran has tens of thousands of drones already pre-programmed for Israelis, not just Israel, but for Israel, they have the 10,000 drones programmed to take out their water filtration facilities, their electric power units, their nuclear sites, their nuclear missiles, their military bases, their infrastructures. Israel is very dependent upon its marine facilities for container ships. They're going to be taken out of commission, and the cranes and everything will be destroyed. You're talking about many, many years to try to rebuild it when everything is finally over. They're going to take out, in the first day, they'll take out every base in Asia, or in every base down, like any bases the Americans, the French, the British, so-called coalition has in Afghanistan or Iraq or Kuwait or wherever, is going to be taken out in the first day or two with pre-program. They have hundreds of thousands of sophisticated drones, and they have hundreds of thousands of missiles. And they've ramped up, these are deep underground, at a range of nuclear weapons, let alone the mother of all type bombs. And they've been getting ready for over 20 years for the invasion or for the attack. And Israel will be just like Gaza in about 30 days later. And I can't see anybody will mind. I don't know anybody on the planet that's going to mind that. And so we've been covering the media's perpetual, Iran better take the deal or else. Trump saying it's going to be either very violent, or it's going to be very violent if they don't take the deal. Iran has told them to take a hike. There will be no deals. Enriching uranium is not enriching uranium is never going to happen. And there's a high probability they already have nuclear. They also have China. They have Russia in their back pocket. So the possibilities of them already having nuclear is pretty realistic. And they don't have an incentive not to have nuclear weapons. If they don't get nuclear weapons, they're going to look just like Ukraine. I don't want to see anybody with nuclear weapons or anybody with using nuclear weapons or anything to do with nuclear, because it destroys the entire ecosystem, the emissions from all these facilities. I'll keep with it here. Happy TEPCO mascot. That cracks me up. You'll figure it out after. Said James got a new song up there or something. Who knows what it is, but like, it doesn't have to be songs because his graphics are so freaking good and so important. Eventually that stuff, there'll be lots of people taking that stuff and chopping it up and using it against the industry. Just like the video footages and stuff like that to tell a story, right? It's going to become a classic. There'll be a huge cult following at some point of what James has produced. I can guarantee you. It's impossible not to be. Like you listen to that song at the start of the show. That's just one of 330 songs he's got up there. It's incredible stuff. And the lyrics are amazing. They're not just the music, which is incredible. It's the lyrics are amazing lyrics. Definitely came into his own. Iran says it will hit Israel's nuclear facility, which means radioactive fallout worldwide. But I mean, that's what needs to happen in order to try to bring the world back in. To try to bring the world back into force. What the hell am I going on here? I wonder. That's all good. I thought there was an insect crawling around in my chest for a second there. A little bit of a panic. How we doing here anyway? Holy shit, we're still going. That's one of the problems when I'm really tired. Not a problem, I suppose, but I don't mind going down the rabbit hole. Morocco achieved top IAEA assurance for peaceful nuclear use. I mean, the reason there was some of the nuclear scientists now in Iran were killed was because the International Atomic Energy Agency gave away those people's positions, apparently. Rafael Grossi included. The International Atomic Energy Agency 2024 annual safeguard, they're not a regulatory agency. So why would they matter? They're not a regulatory agency. They're UN's, which is a military-industrial complex. The same structure as McDonald's. They have no authority over any country. Nuclear first just happened. World's largest Stellarator produces helium-3, which they were talking about harvesting on the moon, right? An unprecedented breakthrough that could power future civilizations. What about geothermal? Why are we trying to put endless money in scientists and thousands of scientists to crack an equation, just a part of an equation, when if you took a fraction of those people and put them to work on cracking the remaining issues with geothermal, you wouldn't need none of this. You're doing this because you say you want to have power to power the planet, but geothermal is right at your fingertips. It's available for everybody on the friggin' planet, and at best they can hope for is to raise $10 million or $20 million or $50 million here and there. When the nuclear industry would just reject that kind of money, they want billions and billions for anything. If you want to sneeze, they need $1 billion. I mean, you got all these fake companies that are claiming they got small modular reactors. And the minute they mention it, every journalist on the planet will respond, oh my God, we're going to have small modular, it's going to be amazing. And geothermal, everybody spits on them when they're your solution. They're right there at your fingertips. Scientists at the Wendelstein, nice name, 7X Stellarator facility have successfully generated high-energy helium-3 ions. Well, whoopee friggin' do. Marking a significant advancement in the pursuit of sustainable fusion energy. How about a significant advance in geothermal, you piece of shit? And they give you pictures like this, which is like, what are you doing? What are you, like 6 years old to bring you that picture? The quest for sustainable fusion energy taking a pivotal step with the generation of helium, high energy helium gamma. Is that a gamma? Yeah. That addresses a critical challenge in fusion research, maintaining the super hot conditions necessary for continuous fusion reaction. Well, they need to get up 100. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's an alpha particle. In fusion reactors, plasma generates high-energy helium-4 nuclides. You need the unit 3 to add the proton to it. Is that what's going on? If these particles escape too quickly, the plasma cools and the reaction cannot be maintained. The problem with fusion, and there's a lot of them, the biggest problem is they're always 50 years away from coming to fruition. And the next problem is the sun can expel the excess plasma millions of miles into space in order to make it work, right? They're trying to contain it, and that's not how fusion works, right? We have all these examples of fusion in space and our own sun, right? And the reason it works is because it's able to throw off the inhibitor, which is the plasma. And on top of that, they're talking about they need 300, some of these companies are looking at 300 million degree Fahrenheit temperatures. 300 million degree temperatures. When all you got to do is drill 10, 12 kilometers down to the earth and you got 1,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, which is better than gas, oil, and coal and nuclear. And any company can build it. You don't need idiotic nuclear degrees, stupid, moron nuclear institutions to make it work. These particles escape too quickly, the plasma cools and the reaction cannot be maintained. So when you're heating something up to 300 million degrees, we typically call it an explosion, right? And I think that's the big problem with this scenario, is because you're creating 300 million degrees. You're literally going to control it with magnets, even though that's just an equation. It's not backed up by science. Right? Everything is a conjecture, an opinion. And everything is postulated, nothing is fact. And this is why, like, one of the biggest fusion projects is an experiment. It's going to take them like 30 years to build it. But the idea is is meant to solve an equation. It's not an actual reactor. It's just meant to solve an equation. So they're going to 5,500 scientists, tens of billions of dollars and counting, to solve an equation to see if it would work. So they're 100 years away from fruition when you're talking about those particular attributes. International Atomic Energy calls on Iran to urgently cooperate to prove its nuclear program. To urgently cooperate. No, Iran is... This guy is disgusting. That's a good day for his hair right there. This is clearly a disgusting parasite. Rafael Grossi. Of course, he's responsible for dead scientists, nuclear scientists in Iran. And look at his face there, right? He's such a scumbag. The stress has to show at some point. The head of the UN nuclear watchdog, Gross, at least he named him right, raised on Monday fresh concerns over Iran's failure to fully cooperate with the inspections. Well, what it was is they allegedly found man-made particles at different sites. But it's impossible not to find man-made particles after Fukushima. No matter where you go. It's impossible. Britain, United States, France, Germany plan to propose a resolution for the board to adopt that would declare Iran in breach of its non-proliferation obligations. So the UN is used to bludgeon any opposition that they don't want to go to war against. It's 195 militaries, though. Look what they've done to North Korea, for goodness sakes. Which was captured by Japan for 50 years. And then Nagasaki, Hiroshima, Japan had to leave. And so then the United Nations went there and destroyed it. Millions dead, millions in refugee camps, millions unaccounted for, millions of orphans to get their minerals. And they had to leave. They lost the war. Even though they called it a police action. This was the United Nations done that. And then has isolated them for over 70 years. So for over 120 years, North Korea has been ostracized from humanity for trying to survive, for trying to break free. And the United Nations has played a significant part in destroying the most vulnerable of that country for 70 plus years. Right? And before that, they were the League of Nations. They're up to the same dirty tricks. Oligarchs is what's behind all of it, right? This family of influences. Russia's latest drone strike hits Kyiv maternity ward in Odessa. But the interesting thing about that headline is they don't provide any dead babies. They don't say this many dead babies died, or this many dead babies were, or this many babies were injured, or they don't provide anything like that. In fact, which was retaliatory measures, part of the retaliatory measure, 4 people were hospitalized in the capital as a result of attacks that hit 7 of the city's 10 districts. So the headline is quite dishonest. Right? That's struck maternity wards, so you expect to be dead babies or injured babies and nurses and doctors and everything else. Instead, you got 4 people who were hospitalized in the capital. Nothing to do with the maternity ward. So the headline was meant to demonize. How can you ever trust media? How does that work? They posted photos of broken windows, what looked like a medical facility, and damage to the facade of several buildings. But the headline said maternity ward. India has zero tolerance for terror, but both of these are terrorist states. India has 1 million children die every year of dysentery, diarrhea, and pneumonia that can be cured for about 15 cents per child with salts. But they spend all their money on nuclear. And you can't eat nuclear. I don't know if anybody ever told them that. Delivering a strong message to Europe on India's zero tolerance policy on terrorism. India carries out terrorism all the time. It was essential never to yield to nuclear blackmail, and vowed that India would strike deep into Pakistan. Oh, so now they're just going to mimic what NATO done to Russia under the proxy of Ukraine. Hang on here. We're almost through. United States Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and I apologize if I butcher people's names. I'm really good at it, though. Too bad you can't make a living at it. Warns of global nuclear catastrophe in emotional Hiroshima video. The former Democratic presidential candidate posted an alarming video on her personal website, social media account, after a visit to Shitland, Japan. Japan's a bunch of shitheads, man. Serial killers destroyed our entire planet and then now covers it up. A visit to Hiroshima last week used a historical setting to frame a harsh rebuke of the U.S. foreign policy elites who she accuses of pushing the world to the brink of a catastrophe. No, this is true 100%. Will Ireland, is this Ireland or Scotland? I can't remember. Scotland. One of the founders of the National Party of Scotland, Wendy Wood, which later grew into the SNP, which is a political party. As early as 1953, the artist and Scottish independent campaigner was vocally against nuclear power site Donerae, which it wasn't a nuclear power site, it was a reprocessing facility. That's going to be 325 years before they can clean it up, they claimed. You can't clean up a nuclear contamination. You can move it somewhere else, but you can't clean it up. It's not like you're renovating a kitchen or something. This is a nuclear event they had there, which had been in the long process of being decommissioned since 1994. 30 years. It's got another 325 years to go. Why would you allow something like that on your planet is beyond me. Labour is pushing for nuclear energy to make a comeback across the United Kingdom. lumping pressure on the Scottish government to do the same. You just need a couple of corrupt people in government. That's not hard to do. They're not there because they're good people. They're there because they're corrupt and they're looking for exact deals like that to set them up for the rest of their life with enough legacy money to take care of their little inbreeds. On Tuesday, Keir Starmer promised there would be no more dithering about backing nuclear power. He's been there for a little tiny while now. He's going to spend a huge amount of money on nuclear. And there's petitions out there to get rid of him because he's such a sleaze. Acting Energy Secretary Gillian Martin said in response to an announcement that the Scottish Government will continue to focus on renewable energy, not nuclear power. Hear, hear. And the campaign group Britain Remade, which to note was founded by the former energy and climate advisor to Boris Johnson. It's one of the right-hand, the insiders, the monster Johnson, the scumbag Johnson, who removed all restrictions on the nuclear wasteland for baby food and cereal 2 years before he removed the restrictions for the rest of the population. You tell me that's not a monster, then what actually is, I wonder? It was found 50% of those who voted for the party in last year's general election believe nuclear power should be included in Scotland. 57%. Should be included in Scotland's energy mix to meet the 2045 net zero target. There's not a friggin' person in the general population that gives a shit about net zero, which is a paper written by Miles Allen and was taken by the United Nations weaponized against humanity. And so there. Like really, so there. So there you have it. That's the show. And we got a new song by James. That's pretty cool. That's pretty darn cool. Just bear with me, I get set up here. I'm going to put the link to that song in the comment section too. Here in a second. We almost made it into a full show. Anyway, it was a good show. It was a long day, man. I actually got a headache the whole show. And usually you just take some salt, right? And that'll get rid of your headache. I have Celtic salt, which has 80 to 90 minerals into it. You can get it at any health food store. It's really good for you. It's way better than any table salt. By leaps and leaps and leaps and leaps and bounds. Let me put that link. So this is James's newest song, just in case you want to hear it. Rather than me always telling you I go over to this site. It's probably better if I just post it. I didn't put anything else there. But anybody's listened to the video, they would have found it. They know if I put links in the comments section in the chat room, then it's not a waste of their time, right? Alright, so we're going to come in and close the poll after. I always close the poll after I play this whatever song. Oh, look, we got a 12% vote down. Aw, oh, you hurt my feelings. Somebody got a bum hurt out there tonight. The nuclear industry come in and spam me. I'm going to control the volume on my side for you. Awesome. TEPCO. Let's look at the name of this again. Got one of the reactors in the background. I'm loving it already. Happy TEPCO mascot. Should be good. I put a link in the description for you. You have a nice night, nice day tomorrow. I'll be out researching all day tomorrow. I'll try to get the show back to the normal time tomorrow night, but I was headache tonight, and Still got it. It's not too bad. I'll take some more salt and that'll be the end of it, I'm sure. Have a good one. Take care.
Echelon's hair starts shift. Hard hat bright, decimeters dead. Skips past scaffolds by unit 3. He waves beneath the crane debris. Pion. Control screen blinks, no IDIC shown. Speaker plays the safety song. Readout lights say status screen. System logs, all steps complete. Samina is your name. Mascot waves, tour mode engaged. Demo panel blinks all clear. He hits the pump, it sounds like steam. Warning light winks, they all applaud. The plant that loves and is loved back. It's printed clean near reactor 4.